Greetings to all the ladies and gentlemen listening to my channel. This is the story of a mother-in-law who married a 2-3-year-old man, and for a whole week, they stayed locked in their room, never coming out. I pushed the door open and was stunned by the scene before me. It was a late autumn afternoon in Boston. A biting wind swept through the brownstones of the historic district, and wet, golden leaves plastered the pavement after a drizzle. The scent of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor mingled with the smell of hot soup from the kitchen. But inside my house, the air was cold for a different reason. Rules. I'm Emily. Having been a daughter-in-law for exactly 1 year, I lived in this 3-story townhouse that stood as imposing as the authority of my mother-in-law, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. My husband is Tom, a man who is kind and loves his wife. But the moment his mother speaks, he automatically shrinks. My son, Leo, is 4, and my daughter, Mia, is 2. These 2 little ones made me believe in the saying silence is golden. That was until I realized that if you stay silent too long, people will take it as permission to trample on your dignity. This house was strict to the point that a spoon placed slightly askew would warrant a comment. Dishes, once washed, had to be dried and hung with the cup handles facing the exact same direction. The indoor slippers had to be placed with the toes pointing toward the door to welcome prosperity. If I did something wrong, she wouldn't yell. She would just look at me and say a single sentence that was enough to make me flush red. A daughter-in-law who knows her place brings peace to the home. It sounded like advice, but it was actually a gag order. Outsiders who met Mrs. Vance often praised her for being spoken and dignified. True, she was cultured in the way a knife is polished, shiny, not vulgar, never raising her voice. But every word had a point. I was once reprimanded by her in front of relatives just because I poured tea too close to the brim of the cup. She smiled benevolently and said, "If you're clumsy, you learn. If you don't learn, you suffer." The entire dinner table went silent. I swallowed my food, choking back both shame and anger. As for Tom, he wasn't a bad man. He knew how to rock me to sleep. He knew which brand of organic milk Leo liked. But every time I asked him to speak to his mother for me, he would sigh. "Just try to understand, honey. Mom has been particular her whole life." Once, I blurted out, "Are you my husband or a student?" He gave that familiar, forced smile. "She raised me alone." Emily. Filial piety sounds warm, but when placed in the wrong context, it becomes an excuse. Then came that Friday afternoon when everything changed direction. I had just come back from the market with fresh salmon, asparagus, and a jar of artisanal pickles. The weather was turning cold, and I planned to make a hearty chowder. Leo was running around the courtyard. Mia was clinging to my leg, asking to be held. While I was still busy rinsing the fish, Mrs. Vance walked downstairs. She was wearing a plum-colored cashmere sweater, her lipstick redder than usual. She sat at the dining table and tapped her chopsticks lightly against her bowl to signal the start of a meeting. She spoke slowly. "I have something to say." Tom put down his fork. "Yes? What is it, Mom?" She lifted her teacup and blew on it leisurely. "I'm going to get married." I froze. Leo looked up innocently. "Is Grandma marrying Santa?" Mia clapped her hands, thinking it was a happy occasion. Tom sputtered. "Mom, what did you say?" Mrs. Vance looked straight ahead. "His name is Dylan. He is 23. 23. My ears rang for a beat. I dare not judge anyone's feelings, but that age gap sent a chill down my spine. Tom, pale-faced, asked weakly, "Have you thought this through, Mom?" Mrs. Vance set the cup down with a sharp clink. "I lived my whole life for you. Now, I live for myself. Anyone who interferes will deal with the consequences." The sentence wasn't loud, but it was heavy as a stone. I remembered the saying that life is about patience, but patience needs dignity, otherwise, it becomes humiliation. I try to be polite. "Yes. If you are happy, Mother, then Tom and I are happy for you." Mrs. Vance smirked. "You saying that shows you know your place." Knowing my place meant knowing how to shut up. Tom turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Don't make Mom lose face." Mrs. Vance sealed the deal instantly, as fast as closing a business contract. "The wedding is next week. We'll keep it small but elegant. You will help me with the preparations. I won't have people criticizing this house." I choked. "Next week? That soon, Mother?" She looked straight at me, her voice cold. "Fast or slow is my business. You remember your duty." The word duty fell onto the dinner table with a dry thud. Tom hurriedly interjected. "Yes, we will arrange everything." She stood up. "Good. Eat. I'm going to my room." She turned and walked away, her slippers tapping rhythmically on the stairs. I watched her go and saw in her hand a folder of documents with a brown cover. She walked straight up to the third floor, where she kept the ledgers, the property deeds, and the decision-making power of this family. Tom sat there sluggishly, as if the air had been sucked out of him. I waited for him to say something for his wife to hold on to, even if it was just to question his mother, but he only sighed. Just try your best, okay? Mom has decided. I replied softly, so softly I was angry at myself. Yeah, I'm used to it. Used to it. But inside me, a crack had just formed with a very quiet snap. In the days following that announcement, the three-story townhouse suddenly resembled a beehive that someone had poked with a stick, people coming and going constantly. The landline rang incessantly. My mother-in-law paced around like someone directing a play. I had my face buried in housework, managing Leo, drawing on the walls while trying to soothe Mia, who was fussy because of the changing weather. Tom handed me a long list. Order the catering, rent the marquee for the courtyard, call the relatives. He spoke as if assigning quotas. I looked at him and asked quietly, Tom, don't you find this weird? Tom frowned. Don't say that. Mom decided. We just have to make it look respectable. I gave a dry laugh. Respectable for whom? For him, or for the fear of being criticized? Tom flinched at the word criticized as if I had touched a nerve. Our family has a reputation, you know that. On the wedding day, the Boston sky was overcast, the wind howling down the alleyways. They say when the winter winds come, trouble breeds. I didn't believe it much, until I walked out to the courtyard and saw the row of luxury cars parked tight, the sound of a portable speaker playing soft jazz, and relatives laughing loudly. Tables and chairs filled the first floor. The smell of roast chicken, savory sticky rice, and hot appetizers wafted through the house. It looked festive, but I felt like I was standing in an interrogation room. Mrs. Vance appeared in an emerald green velvet dress, her hair pinned up neatly, makeup heavier than usual. Wherever she walked, people parted like the Red Sea. Aunt Margaret from the paternal side pulled me aside, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. Emily, your mother-in-law is something else. Marrying a boy that young? I responded with the standard daughter-in-law answer. Yes, as long as mother is happy, that's what matters. Aunt Margaret chuckled. Right. Parents sit, children stand. But in this case, I bet mother sits and the whole house has to kneel. I was about to turn away when I saw Dylan walk in. He was even more dashing in real life than in the photos, tall, fair skin, slicked back hair, wearing a white shirt tucked in sharply. He carried 2 gift baskets, his smile perfectly measured. He bowed to Mrs. Vance first, then swept his eyes around the room and stopped at me. You must be Emily, right? Dylan smiled, his voice soft as cotton. I'm Dylan. I'll need your and Tom's help to take care of Mom and me today. Using my first name sounded polite, but I felt it was calculated. Calling me by my name to ingratiate himself with the relatives, putting himself in the role of the humble newcomer. I nodded, keeping my distance. Yes, I'm Emily. Please, make yourself at home. Dylan raised an eyebrow slightly, as if catching the nuance, then swallowed it. He turned to Tom and extended his hand. Hello, Tom. I heard Mom say you are very filial. Tom awkwardly shook his hand, smiling stiffly. Hello, Dylan. I noticed Dylan's hands, nails manicured clean, wearing a shiny ring, not the hands of a working man. He spoke to everyone with a catchphrase. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I understand. It sounded smooth, like he had memorized a script. Outsiders whispered about how charming Mrs. Vance's husband was. But in my mind, a phrase echoed. Sweet honey drowns the fly. The ceremony was brief, but had enough ritual to save Mrs. Vance's face. During the toast, she stood in the middle of the living room, her voice resonant and clear. I lived my whole life for my children. Now I'm married to live again. I don't need anyone's gossip. She looked straight at the row of relatives, smiling but with a warning in her eyes. Anyone who interferes deals with the consequences. The room went silent for a beat. I heard someone cough dryly. Tom stood next to me, his shoulders tense. I knew he was terrified of his mother losing face, so terrified he forgot to look and see where his wife stood in this story. When it was time to clear the tables, I was busy carrying a tray of soup and stacking dishes for the guests. Dylan drifted over, helping to carry a platter of fruit, speaking loudly. Emily, let me do it. You go watch the kids. Saying that scored him points immediately, but his eyes darted quickly toward the staircase. I caught that moment very clearly. It wasn't the curious look of a guest, It was the look of an appraiser. He looked at the wooden banister, looked at the coffered ceiling, looked at the corner cabinet where Mrs. Vance kept the keys and papers, then looked up straight to the third floor, where Mrs. Vance's room was closed tight. I carried the tray past him, deliberately slowing down. Dylan thought no one noticed, his mouth still smiling, but his eyes lingered too long enough to give me goosebumps. Tom pulled me into the back kitchen while the guests were clinking glasses. "Don't look so grim, Emily. People will think we don't respect Mom." I asked, my voice low but sharp. "Do you see how he looks at our house? Like he's looking at assets?" Tom brushed it off. "You're overthinking. He's young and new to the house. Looking around is normal." I looked him straight in the eye. Normal is looking at people, at relatives. No one walks in and stares up at the third floor like they're casing a vault. Tom frowned. "Emily, please, just keep it behind closed doors. As long as Mom is happy." I didn't argue anymore. I just felt the phrase "as long as Mom is happy" fall down like a lid sealing off my every word. By the end of the event, the guests thinned out. The courtyard still smelled of incense and wine. Dylan stood alone near the foot of the stairs, twirling a lighter in his hand, eyes looking up at the third floor again. I walked past. He turned and smiled. "This house is really tall, isn't it, Emily? It must be very airy up top." "Airy or not depends on the owner," I replied curtly. Dylan laughed softly. "Yeah, I was just asking to know." But the words "to know" sounded more like "to verify." I held Mia, who was asleep, on my shoulder. A saying my grandmother used to say soaked into my heart. To judge a person, look at them when they aren't acting. Dylan acted very well, but his eyes just now, he couldn't fake those. The morning after the wedding, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was diligent, but because there was a stranger in the house. I needed to see with my own eyes. The sky was still gray with fog, the wind cutting through the door cracks. I washed rice to make porridge for Leo and warmed milk for Mia. My ears picked up footsteps on the second floor. Dylan appeared at the kitchen door, wearing a neat t-shirt, hair combed perfectly. He smiled. "Emily, let me help you wash the vegetables." Saying that, he rolled up his sleeves and washed the greens thoroughly and evenly, not splashing a drop of water. That standard of perfection makes people easily soften their hearts. Mrs. Vance walked down after that, completely different from her usual self. No cold face, no steely eyes. She wore a light cardigan and small earrings, moving gently as if afraid to break the atmosphere. She looked at Dylan washing vegetables and smiled faintly. "See? A man who knows how to help in the kitchen is a man who loves his wife." I almost choked, because that was the exact sentence she used to scold Tom when he forgot to take out the trash. I stayed silent. Indeed, new people get privileges. Old people get scrutinized. Tom came downstairs, saw the scene, and exhaled in obvious relief. He turned to me and whispered, "See? He's decent." I didn't answer immediately. I just watched how Dylan placed the colander of vegetables right on the edge of the sink, handles facing out, exactly like someone who had lived here for a long time. Breakfast passed smoothly. Dylan proactively fed Mia 2 spoonfuls of porridge. Mia giggled and clung to his neck. Mrs. Vance watched, her eyes glistening. The girl has a bond with her step-grandfather. Hearing the word step-grandfather made my skin crawl, but I pressed my lips together. Around noon, Mrs. Vance told me to go up to her room and bring down the sewing kit to fix a button on Leo's shirt. I walked up to the third floor, standing before her room, which had always been a restricted zone. Normally, I would just knock and wait. I wouldn't dare presume to enter. Today, she had left the door unlocked. Inside, it smelled of a new perfume. I walked in. While getting the sewing kit, I accidentally saw a brown file folder tied with a red string on the table. Mrs. Vance was standing in front of the mirror adjusting her hair. Seeing me look, she spoke softly but firmly. "My papers." "Don't be curious." I replied softly. "Yes, Mother. I just think house papers should be kept carefully. There are a lot of people in the house these days." Mrs. Vance spun around, her smile vanishing instantly. "Who are you talking about?" I kept my voice even. "I'm not talking about anyone specifically. I'm talking about being cautious." Mrs. Vance sneered. "Cautious for me? Or for you?" I choked for a beat. That question reminded me of my position. A daughter-in-law has no right to caution, only the right to serve. I bowed my head. "For the whole family." Mrs. Vance waved her hand. "Go worry about your cooking. Don't learn the habit of worrying about the general's job when you're just a soldier. The rebuke was light but painful. I carried the sewing kit out, reminding myself that if you pull up a radish, you get mud on your hands. But here, no matter how clean you are, you're wrong if you cross her. That afternoon, Dylan invited Tom out for coffee to talk man to man. Tom was hesitant, but Mrs. Vance urged him. Go on, son. Men need friends. Sticking to the kitchen all day won't get you anywhere. I felt the sting. Turns out, sticking to the kitchen is a fault. But if you stick to the kitchen to help your wife, it's a bonus point depending on who you are. After Tom left, the house contained only me, Mrs. Vance, and the two kids. Mrs. Vance lay on the sofa looking at her phone, occasionally smiling to herself. I was busy hanging laundry, but I noticed she kept texting and then hiding the phone under the pillow, as if afraid someone would see. When it was time to cook dinner, Mrs. Vance said, What are you cooking tonight that your stepfather likes? He's young, he needs to eat well to have strength. I held the butcher knife, my hand pausing slightly. I asked very quietly, Mother, how do you know what he likes so surely? Mrs. Vance glared at me. You don't need to ask. I know. I laughed internally. The woman who once criticized me for being too fancy with food was now catering to every taste of the newcomer. A starving man appreciates a crumb, but here, the crumbs were distributed unevenly. That night, Tom came home, visibly happy. He bragged that Dylan knew a lot of connections. He told me if I need anything later, just call. I asked, What connections? Tom replied vaguely. Business connections. Then, he lowered his voice. I'm looking to turn over some capital. Mom promised she'd see about helping. I looked at him. So, his peace of mind wasn't just because his mother was happy, but because he saw another person who could bridge the gap to the money. I didn't blame Tom for being greedy. I just saw that he was easily led. Just then, Dylan walked into the living room, holding a bag of fruit, smiling brightly. I bought some grapes and apples for the kids. Vitamins are good for them. He sat down on the chair, crossing his legs very naturally, like the master of the house. Then he spoke vaguely, eyes wandering around. This house is really spacious. Must be worth around $6 or $7 million, right? That sentence fell lightly like a feather, but stabbed straight into my heart. Tom laughed it off. Oh, why do you ask? It's my mother's house. Dylan nodded. Yeah, I was just asking to know. In this day and age, having a decent house is a blessing. I looked at his smile, still polite, still proper, but I heard within it a dry click, like the sound of a lock tumbling into place. I suddenly felt I needed to do something. Memorize. Memorize the times he came and went. Memorize where Mrs. Vance kept her keys. Memorize every question he asked to know. Because I understood that smart birds sing freely, but a different kind of smart bird asks with a sweet voice, so people open the door themselves without realizing it. The next morning, I was hanging clothes on the second-floor balcony when my phone vibrated incessantly. The family group chat popped up with 3 messages in a row. Sender, Mother Vance. I am going into retreat for 7 days. Anyone who disturbs me will be considered unfilial. The 3rd floor is for me to take care of myself. No one is allowed up. I read it, my fingers turning cold. A retreat is a retreat, but the way she set conditions sounded like a sentencing. Before I could say anything, Tom came up from downstairs, eyes glued to his screen, his voice serious. You heard Mom. Absolutely do not go up. I looked at him. Don't you find it strange? Suddenly, a retreat and prohibiting us like that. Tom frowned. Mom just got married. She needs privacy. I shot back, trying to keep my voice soft. Privacy just means closing the door. Why does it sound like martial law? Tom exhaled. Emily, don't make everything tense. Mom says so, we do so. Just then, a clang rang out from downstairs. Metal hitting metal. I looked over the banister and saw Dylan bending down, installing a new padlock on the door to the 3rd floor. He worked neatly, proficiently, without asking anyone a single question. Tom's face froze slightly, but then he turned away as if he didn't want to see. The padlock shone brightly, brand new from the store. Its shadow was dark against the wooden door. Just looking at it made my throat tight. From that noon on, the daily life in the house changed completely, as if someone had pulled a curtain dividing it in two. Mrs. Vance and Dylan almost disappeared from the 1st floor. No coming down to eat, no coming down for water, no asking what Leo drew at school today, no asking if Mia's cough was better. Both of them seemed to withdraw to the 3rd floor and lock it down, leaving us below to live a fill in the blank's existence. For the first meal after the order, I cooked chrysanthemum green soup, braised fish, and an omelet for the kids. I set the tray and looked up the stairs, hesitating. I told Tom to take it up, but in the end, it was me. Because halfway up, he took a work call and turned his back into the room, leaving behind a sigh and the sound of dishes. I carried the tray to the third-floor landing. Standing before the door, I whispered, "Mother, I'm leaving food here." No answer. I placed the tray close to the door like leaving food outside a hospital room. 1 minute later, the door opened a crack, exactly 1 hand width, just enough to stick a hand out. The hand dragged the tray in zip fast and cold. The door closed immediately. No thank you. No sound. I stood there frozen. For the first time in my life as a daughter-in-law, I didn't feel like a family member. I felt like a delivery person on a shift. Back in the kitchen, Leo hugged a pillow, looking up with wide eyes. "Mommy, why isn't Grandma eating with me?" Mia also pouted. "Where's Grandma?" I choked back a sob, forcing a smile. "Grandma is tired. She's resting in her room. You two eat nicely, and I'll give you yogurt later." Leo pouted. "I want Grandma to tell me superhero stories." I turned away to wash dishes. The water ran, but my heart ached. For that whole week, my family lived to a weird rhythm. Two worlds under the same roof, but never touching. The first floor was the sound of children, the soft click of the rice cooker, the sound of my slippers running back and forth. The third floor was silence. Occasionally the sound of flushing water, dragging footsteps, and the click of the lock reminding us, "Do not cross." Tom grew more avoidant by the day, leaving earlier and coming home later. At home, he spoke little, as if afraid opening his mouth would invite trouble. Once I asked him straight, "Don't you see this is abnormal? She's your mother. Why don't you go up and ask one question?" Tom scowled. "Mom said no one is allowed up. Do you want me to be unfilial?" I smiled sadly. "What about me? I can be the bad guy, as long as the house is safe." Tom went silent, then changed the subject, like throwing a blanket over a smoldering fire. On the third day, I discovered another strange thing. The food I sent up wasn't just for one anymore. Sometimes I cooked a little, thinking it was just enough for Mrs. Vance, but the tray came back clean, including the fruit I left for her. That meant there were two people eating up there, and they were eating regularly. On the evening of the fourth day, the wind blew hard, rattling the windows. Leo was asleep, and Mia had just drifted off. I was folding clothes when I heard a noise from the third floor. Not footsteps. It sounded like something dragging, followed by a heavy thud against the floor. I stood still, my heart beating like someone knocking inside my chest. I opened the bedroom door slightly to look out at the dark corridor. The stair light was yellow and dim, casting long shadows. A moment later, another thud, then silence. I turned to Tom and saw him lying there, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to hear. I whispered, "Tom, did you hear that?" Tom lifted his eyes, replying indifferently. "Mom's probably rearranging furniture." I asked, "Rearranging what in the middle of the night?" Tom snapped, "Emily, stop it. You exaggerate everything. It's exhausting." I bit my lip. People say the husband is the roof of the house. But I saw the roof of our house now wasn't tiles or shingles, but a brand new padlock. That night, I lay awake. The cold New England wind hissed through the cracks, chilling me to the bone. I heard the steady breathing of my two children, peaceful and safe. But, in my head, there was only the image of that third-floor door tightly shut, and the hand dragging the food tray in like pulling a secret into the dark. I didn't cry. I just felt a fear growing, not loud, but persistent like kitchen smoke. And I understood that these 7 days would not just be a retreat. It was a step towards something that the person upstairs was actively leading the whole family into. The next morning, I took Leo to his art class at the corner, and then came back carrying Mia to go to the pharmacy. The Boston morning was steely gray. The streets around the market were crowded. People jostled to buy groceries, haggling loudly as if fearing they'd miss out. I was afraid too, not of missing out on vegetables, but of losing my composure. When I got home, I had just put the bags down when I heard the third-floor lock click. Dylan walked down alone, holding a glass of water, chewing gum loudly. He glanced at me, gave a social smile. "Where did you take the kids so early, Emily?" I replied curtly, "Errands." He said, then walked straight to the door. His flip-flops dragged on the tiles with a swish-swish sound. He didn't greet anyone, Didn't even look at the family altar or the living room like the first few days he was playing a role. In the kitchen, my mother-in-law was absent. I cooked a simple lunch for myself, and the kids shredded chicken noodle soup with some bok choy. Mia sat in her high chair, banging her spoon, babbling dada. I soothed her. Eat nicely, but felt a lump in my throat like a fishbone. In the late afternoon, I was wiping the counter when I heard a phone notification ring in the living room. Not my phone, but Mrs. Vance's phone, which she usually left on the tea table. Normally, she carried it everywhere. Today she forgot it. I intended to ignore it, but the notification kept buzzing. The screen lit up, displaying a line that made me freeze. Transaction successful. I'm not a snooper. I understand boundaries. But in this house, I was forced to live by her rules, while she arbitrarily changed everything, locking doors, cutting off contact, and now money. The screen stayed lit. I glanced quickly, just enough to read. Transfer $2,000. Then another notification popped up. $2,500. Less than an hour apart. I felt my hands go cold, sweat dampening my palms despite the chill. I hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Then the self-defense instinct of a mother won. I quickly snapped a photo of the screen, not to harm anyone, but to protect myself so I wouldn't be turned into a liar without proof if something happened. After snapping the photo, I put the phone back exactly where it was, my heart beating like a drum. Before I could breathe, the phone vibrated again. Another transaction message, $1,800. I wondered where the money was coming from, going out like water, and going to whom. Just then, Tom came home. He walked in, took off his mask, looking exhausted. I looked at him for a moment, trying to keep my voice normal. Tom, has Mom been transferring a lot of money lately? Tom paused while drinking water. Why do you ask? I didn't show the photo immediately. I just said, I saw Mom's phone notifying multiple transactions in a row. Tom sighed, like someone poked in a sore spot. Mom gave Dylan some pocket money. She just got married. He needs to buy things. I gave a bitter laugh. Mrs. Vance's pocket money equaled months of expenses for my 2 kids. I asked slowly, do you remember when Mia had a fever? And I bought an extra tin of formula. What Mom said to me. Tom frowned. You're bringing up old stuff again. I looked straight at him. Old stuff, but the measuring stick is the same. Mom scolded me for being wasteful over $50, and now thousands go poof in an instant, and you call it pocket money. Tom set the glass down harder than necessary. Emily, don't talk like that. Mom has money. She spends it. I gritted my teeth, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. Mom's money, or the family's money? Tom looked away. The house is in Mom's name. Whatever she wants to do is her right. The phrase in Mom's name was a knife cutting through all my logic. I went silent for a few seconds, then asked the thing I feared most. Are you asking Mom to sign any papers? Tom started, blinking rapidly. Who told you? I didn't answer vaguely. I heard you talking on the phone a few days ago. You're short on funds, right? Tom rubbed his forehead, voice lowering. Yeah, I'm rotating capital. This shipment needs funding. Mom promised to sign some papers to help me. I asked. What papers? Tom replied evasively. Business papers. I smiled, but this time it wasn't bitter, it was cold. You say, business papers, just like Mom says, retreat. It sounds harmless, but no one knows what's inside. Tom scowled. Don't be sarcastic. I leaned in to look at him closely. Are you afraid Mom will get mad, or afraid she won't sign? Tom was silent. That silence answered for him. I suddenly remembered the saying, you can't preach morality on an empty stomach. Tom needed capital to do business, so righteousness toward his wife naturally took a back seat. I didn't blame him for needing money. I just felt that my children and I were placed in the waiting room waiting for someone else's mercy to be safe. That night, I bathed Mia and put her to sleep. Leo lay next to me, asking innocently, Mommy, will Grandma buy me toys? I choked up, stroking his hair. If you're good, everyone loves you. I said it, but in my heart, I knew that in this house, love was sometimes calculated by which side you were on. When the house was quiet, I opened the photo I had taken again. The numbers jumped out like wet ink, staining my eyes. I wondered, if money kept flowing like this, would the day come when the thing being demanded wasn't just pocket money, but the whole house? I sat alone on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind whistle through the gap in the window. Outside, the motorbike sounds faded, But inside my house, something was roaring that no one dared to name. I didn't want to be a suspicious daughter-in-law, but I couldn't be a blind one either. In life, being smart is rarely better than being honest. But being too honest in a dangerous place is sometimes just foolish. The annual memorial dinner for my late father-in-law, Mr. Vance, was always a major milestone for my husband's family. He had passed long ago, but his portrait still hung solemnly in the first-floor living room, in the brightest spot, so anyone entering had to bow their head. Previously, Mrs. Vance treated the memorial dinner like a test of discipline. If the offering tray lacked a single dish, she would glare at me as if I lacked the morals of a daughter-in-law. Yet this year, she remained in silent retreat on the third floor, leaving me to spin like a top. Early in the morning, I went to the market. It was cold. The mist smelled of fresh fish and pine. I bought a free-range chicken over 4 pounds, fresh herbs, green bananas, yellow chrysanthemums, vermicelli, and wood ear mushrooms. Then stopped by the bakery to order a small tray of sticky rice to ensure the ritual was correct. I calculated every penny because the recent money transfers were stuck in my head. It felt like a thorn not bleeding yet, but stinging every time I moved. Back home, I had just put the bags down in the kitchen when Mia toddled over to hug my leg, babbling to be held. Leo excitedly showed me a drawing of a superhero from school. Asking if I could hang it up, I patted his head and smiled, but my heart was busy with 100 worries. Being a mother is like that. No matter what happens in the house, the children still need a peaceful face to hold on to. I started cleaning the altar, polishing every lampstand, removing excess incense sticks. The smell of old agarwood mixed with the altar wood reminded me of my first year as a daughter-in-law. Being inexperienced, I placed a pair of chopsticks facing the wrong way. Mrs. Vance stood behind me and said exactly one sentence: "If you are sloppy with the ancestors, you will suffer later." At that time, I was scared. I learned. Now, I still did it carefully. Not because I feared her anymore, but because I believe that remembering one's roots is a family tradition, not a tool for scolding. At noon, Tom came home for lunch. I said gently, "This afternoon, you should go up and ask Mom what dishes we should offer for Dad's memorial, just to be correct so we don't miss anything." Tom held his bowl and replied indifferently, "If you want to ask, ask." But Mom warned us not to disturb her. I looked at him. For Dad's memorial, asking a question is manners. Tom frowned. "Just do what we did last year." I tried to swallow my annoyance. I waited for Tom to finish eating, then picked up Mia, told Leo to watch cartoons, and walked up the stairs. My heart suddenly beat fast. I didn't know if it was the cold or because that third floor was increasingly looking like a sovereign state with its own laws. Reaching the landing, I stood before the third floor door. The brand new padlock still glinted like a fisheye. I knocked lightly, keeping my tone respectful. "Mother, it's Emily. I have a quick question about Dad's memorial dinner." No answer. I waited a beat and knocked again, softer. "Mother, I just want to ask to prepare everything thoughtfully." Still silence. Silence so deep I could hear the wall clock ticking downstairs. I was about to turn back when I heard quick footsteps behind me. Tom came up, his face dark as if someone had poured oil on him. He pulled me back a bit, his voice gritted. "What are you doing?" Mom messaged clearly. I stood my ground. "Is asking about Dad's memorial wrong?" Tom hissed, afraid the people upstairs would hear. "Wrong is you not knowing your place. Mom is in retreat, and you keep knocking." I choked. "You call that retreat? A retreat where she locks the door, won't come down to eat, won't see her grandchildren?" Tom's eyes widened. "Watch your mouth, she is my mother." Suddenly, blood rushed to my face. I didn't want to shout, but my dignity was being swept into the corner like dust. I spoke slowly. "I just want to keep the traditions. Dad's memorial is a family matter, not anyone's private business." Tom sneered, his words falling like a bucket of ice water. "Or are you jealous?" I froze. Jealous? Jealous of my mother-in-law? Jealous of a wedding to a young boy? I felt humiliated to my very core. I asked again, my voice trembling with indignation. "What did you say?" Tom was irritated. "You keep prying, keep acting annoyed. You just can't stand that Mom is happy, can you?" At that exact moment, the third floor door cracked open not fully. Dylan stood in the gap, wearing loungewear, his face completely indifferent. He looked at me, then at Tom, the corner of his mouth lifting very slightly. That kind of smile, needing no sound, was enough to make one's face burn. He said nothing, just pulled the door shut, click, like latching another layer of humiliation onto my head. I watched the door close, my throat suddenly dry. I turned to Tom, trying to hold on to the last bit of calm. Did you see that? He is looking down on me. I am your wife, the mother of Leo and Mia. And you say I'm jealous? Tom avoided my eyes. Don't make a scene. If people hear, it's trouble. I let out a laugh, not happy, just like a sharp exhale. In this house, if I say a polite sentence, I'm accused of disturbing the peace. If I express hurt, I'm accused of making a scene. Yet the person up there locking doors, transferring money, doing everything shady is excused as needing privacy. I went downstairs, still holding Mia. The little girl looked at me bewildered, reaching out to touch my cheek as if asking why mommy was hot. I swallowed the lump in my throat, telling myself patience brings peace. But then I felt sorry for myself. Patience to bring peace for whom? When they treat my patience as something granted. That evening, I sat alone by the offering tray I had prepared, looking at the yellow chrysanthemums with a heavy heart. I understood that the Memorial Day wasn't just about lighting incense. It was a mirror reflecting who was truly keeping the traditions and who was using traditions to silence others. That night, the cold deepened. The wind hissed through the window cracks, dragging the sound of dry leaves in the alley, like someone secretly sweeping the yard. Leo slept soundly, clutching his teddy bear. Mia turned constantly, her nose stuffy from a slight cold. I tucked the blanket around her, sitting against the headboard, eyes wide open. In my head, Tom's accusation, "You're jealous," swirled like mud, splattered on a white shirt, not tearing it, but staining it shamefully. I had tried to swallow it, tried to pretend not to hear because couples should resolve things behind closed doors. But how do you close the door when the biggest door in the house is locking everyone out? I heard Tom breathing evenly beside me. He could sleep, sleeping very quickly, the sleep of someone used to dodging everything by closing his eyes. I looked at the ceiling, asking myself, if tomorrow on Dad's memorial, Mrs. Vance still doesn't come down, how will I explain to the relatives? By saying Mom is in retreat? Saying it out loud sounded both forced and ridiculous. Near 1 a.m., Mia suddenly coughed dryly. I picked her up, patted her back, and mixed some warm water for her. After drinking, her eyes drooped, and she leaned on my shoulder. I put her down, intending to lie back down, when a scratching sound echoed from the third floor, like a chair dragging, followed by a dry thud hitting the floor. Not loud, but in the silent night, it was terrifyingly clear. I sat up, heart pounding, not from fear of ghosts, but fear of the living. People say love makes even the ugly look beautiful. But I saw something twisted in this house that no one dared to name. I walked out to the dark hallway, the stair light casting thin, yellow shadows. The noise upstairs stopped. Then the sound of running water in the bathroom echoed. I stood silent for a moment, clutching the hem of my shirt, then decided. Not a rash decision, but the decision of a mother needing to know what she was shielding her children from. I went up the stairs. Every step felt longer. Reaching the landing, I stood before the third floor door, where for days it had been locked like a threat. But now, I saw the padlock wasn't latched. The key was stuck in it loosely, jingling slightly in the draft. I froze. They had warned no one to come up, acted like it was a forbidden palace, yet left the door open like this. Either they were careless, or they were confident no one dared to cross. I swallowed hard and knocked very lightly. "Mother, it's Emily." No answer. I called again, softer. "Mother, are you okay?" Still silence. Only the sound of water in the bathroom flowing steadily, as if trying to hide something. I stood for a few more seconds, then pushed the door. A pungent smell hit me immediately. Cheap cologne, cigarette smoke mixed with stale humidity. The room was freezing because the AC was on high. Yet I saw Mrs. Vance sitting on the edge of the bed, back hunched, hair messy, forehead beaded with sweat. Her eyes were swollen red, as if she had been crying for a long time. I stepped forward in panic. "Mother? What's wrong?" Mrs. Vance startled like someone caught doing something wrong. She hurriedly pulled the blanket to cover her chest, her voice rasping out. "Get out." I stopped. I had never heard her speak to me in that tone. Not the familiar commanding tone, but a trembling voice of fear. Right then, the bathroom door burst open. Dylan walked out, a towel wrapped around him, hair wet, a chain glittering on his neck. He looked me up and down, eyes cold, then smirked. "Emily, walking into an adult's room without knocking. His voice dragged out my name, sounding sweet but stinging. I tried to stay calm. I knocked. No one answered. I heard a noise. I was worried about Mom. Dylan sneered. Worried? Or curious about what goes on in the bedroom? That sentence was like a slap in the face. I turned red but stood straight. Watch your mouth. Dylan stepped a beat closer, the smell of cologne acrid. In this house, I am the husband of the owner. I turned to Mrs. Vance, seeking a familiar look from the woman who used to rule the household. But Mrs. Vance didn't look at me. She lowered her head, hands gripping the blanket, lips moving as if wanting to speak, but unable to. I choked up. Mother, say something. I just asked if you were okay. Mrs. Vance breathed heavily, then blurted out a very small sentence that seemed to fall onto the floor tiles. Mary, don't interfere in my business. Mary. She called me by the wrong name. For a year, she had always called me Emily or you. Calling me by the wrong name in panic that alone betrayed she was no longer in control of herself. I stood there, pinned. I looked at her, a woman always sharp as a knife. Yet, now her eyes avoided mine, shoulders hunched, like someone cornered against a wall. I suddenly realized this wasn't the scene of a happy mother, as Tom kept saying. This was the scene of a woman being dragged by her hair, only the hand pulling her wasn't visible to the world. Dylan crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe, voice blasé. Go downstairs. It's late. Don't make noise, it shows a lack of breeding. He used the word breeding exactly like borrowing Mrs. Vance's old weapon. I felt cold. Hoist with his own petard, indeed, but the one getting hurt wasn't the villain, it was the whole family. I backed out the door, hands shaking. Before closing it, I looked back one last time. Mrs. Vance still had her head down as if swallowing tears. Dylan stared at me fixedly, his eyes showing no fear of being discovered. Only one thing very clearly: the disdain of someone who thinks they hold all the power. I closed the door softly, the lock clicking a tiny ting, but inside me, everything just shattered with a very loud crash. The next morning, the morning after I went up to the third floor, I woke up feeling like I had swallowed a stone. The early winter sky was numbingly cold. The kitchen wasn't warm yet, but my heart was cold first. I made milk for Mia, prepared breakfast for Leo, trying to keep everything normal so the kids wouldn't see the fracture in their mother's eyes. Around 8 a.m., Dylan clumped down the stairs. Tank top, shorts, flip-flops, completely different from the polite white shirt style of the wedding day. He didn't greet anyone, just looked around the floor and jerked his chin. Clean the living room again, Emily. It's dusty. How can you leave it like this? I stood straight, holding a rag. I replied, voice just loud enough to hear. With kids in the house, dust is normal, but I will clean when I am free. Dylan chewed his gum, smirking. Free? You stay at home. What are you busy with? That sentence was light but humiliating. Stay at home, take care of 2 kids, cook, clean, shuttle them around. Yet, he spoke as if I sat around doing nothing. I looked him straight in the eye. I am busy being a mother, and I am a daughter-in-law, not a maid. Dylan narrowed his eyes, voice dropping, threatening but smooth. Do you dare say that in front of your mother-in-law? Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. A message from Mrs. Vance sent directly to me, not the group chat. Go up to the room and get Dylan's clothes to wash. The pants are stained. Wash carefully. Get the smell out. I read it, my head buzzing. Get the smell out sounded like an order from a mistress to a servant, not a mother-in-law asking a daughter-in-law. I showed the screen to Tom when he walked down, thinking he would find it odd. But Tom glanced at it and said casually, Mom asked, just do it. What's the big deal? I looked at him in disbelief. You say, what's the big deal? Tom sighed. Emily, we live in the same house. If Mom asks, just do it. Don't make a big thing out of it. I blurted out a sentence I found bitter myself. You want me to serve your stepdad? Tom darkened immediately. Watch your language. I laughed dryly. So, watching my language means bowing my head to wash clothes for the man who threatened me last night? Tom startled, but instead of asking threatened how, he chose the familiar path. Avoidance. He lowered his voice like soothing a child. You imagine too much. Don't get involved. The house is peaceful. I asked slowly, peaceful for whom? Tom was annoyed. Peaceful for Mom. She just got married. She needs to be comfortable. I looked over at Dylan. He sat crossing his legs on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, smiling like he was watching a comedy. The feeling of having my dignity trampled wasn't loud. It smoldered like hot coals. I picked up Mia, taking a deep breath so I wouldn't say another word the children would have to hear. I walked up to the third floor, taking the laundry bag as instructed. Before the door, the lock was still there, but open. I walked in feeling like I was entering a place I didn't belong. Inside the room, Mrs. Vance didn't look at me. She turned her back, voice cold. Wash thoroughly. Whites shouldn't turn yellow. I replied, yes. Just one word to keep the peace. But my heart remembered the saying, a bite of food can be a bite of shame. Sometimes, a piece of clothing is a piece of shame if you are forced to wear the role of a servant. Downstairs, I threw the clothes in the washing machine, hands shaking. Dylan walked by, dropping a sentence like granting a favor. Work hard a bit. If Mom is happy, the house is peaceful. He used the exact phrase Tom often used, as if they shared a script. I looked at him, strangely calm. Don't worry. I work hard, but I'm not stupid. Dylan paused for half a second, then laughed. Oh, you have a sense of humor. I'm not joking. I'm just beginning to understand I need to change how I play. Interjection to audience asking for likes, subscribes, skip to maintain narrative flow. That noon, I cooked lunch and fed Leo first so he could nap. Tom ate a few bites, then got a phone call. He went to the balcony, speaking low, but I caught a few words. That amount, Mom, signing, delayed, is bad. I stood in the kitchen, stirring soup. But inside my head, only the image of the brown file folder I saw on the third floor appeared. That evening, when the kids slept, I sat alone on the edge of the bed, opening a notebook to jot down quick notes of what to remember. Not to dig up dirt, but to keep my mind clear. I wrote down the times Dylan went downstairs, his attitude Mrs. Vance's messages, Tom's sentences. These things, if turned upside down tomorrow, will give me ground to stand on. I don't want to argue with tears anymore. Tears in this house only make people think I'm weak, and bullies always choose the weak to break. I looked at the two children sleeping peacefully, telling myself a very real truth. I can take a loss, but I cannot let my children grow up watching their mother be despised. That night, I didn't sleep deeply, but unlike previous nights, I wasn't blindly confused. Within me, something clearer began to form, a cold calm, like someone who has walked through rain and knows how to hold the umbrella correctly. I tossed and turned until I drifted off for a bit, then woke with a start at a faint scratch sound, like paper rubbing together. The clock on the dresser showed 2:57 a.m. The house was pitch dark, only the nightlight casting a thin yellow glow on the wall. Leo lay next to me, breathing evenly. Mia slept in the crib nearby, mouth puckered, as if dreaming of candy. The scratch sounded again, this time with the sound of a chair dragging, not the sound of a house with children dropping toys. It was intentional, rhythmic, and coming definitely from above. I sat up, heart pounding. I didn't want to wake Tom because I knew he'd say, don't exaggerate. But if I lay still, I felt like I was blindfolding myself. I got out of bed, walking barefoot into the hallway. The tile floor was ice cold, waking me completely. I closed the bedroom door softly, afraid to wake Leo. Walking a few steps, I heard voices indistinct, but a male voice drawling like giving orders. I held my breath, creeping to the stairs. At the second-floor landing, I stopped. Looking up, I saw only darkness and the shadow of the wooden banister. I dared not go further. In life, you need to know your enemy and yourself. But right now, I just needed to know enough to protect myself, not enough to rush into danger. Mrs. Vance's voice echoed down, hoarse, small, and broken. I did as you said. What else do you want? I froze. The word you, in a formal, distant way, popped out of her mouth like a slip. The man who always called himself husband in front of the world, why was she addressing him like that now? My back went cold. Dylan's voice replied immediately, not loud but freezing. Sign the papers. Then I deleted. Delete. That word was a knife. I heard every letter, clear enough to grind my teeth. Mrs. Vance sobbed, trying to suppress it but breaking. Please, please don't send it. I can't bear it. In the darkness, I gripped the handrail. My chest tightened. A woman who spent her life keeping up appearances, valuing outsiders' opinions more than family meals. Now saying she couldn't bear it. It meant she was pushed to the edge. Dylan laughed softly, a laugh with no pity. If you don't sign, tomorrow morning you'll be on the internet. I felt like someone threw ice water on me. On the internet, 3 words sounded light, But what lay behind them, everyone understood. At Mrs. Vance's age, reputation was heavier than money. One dirty thing released was enough to kill a lifetime of self-respect. Mrs. Vance's voice trembled. I transferred the money already. What more do you want? Dylan replied, voice steady like reading a list. Money is money. The house is the house. You sign it over to my name, and you can live in peace. I bit my lip hard, trying not to make a sound. Turns out the money transfers I saw were just the tip of the iceberg. The submerged part was the house deed. I remembered Dylan's eyes looking at the third floor on the wedding day. Remembered the brown file folder, every piece fit together, fit terrifyingly well. Mrs. Vance choked. Signed. You'll delete everything, right? Dylan grunted. After you sign, I keep a copy, so you don't try any tricks. My blood boiled to my neck. He forces her to sign, then keeps leverage, meaning there is no way back, only a tightening noose. Mrs. Vance sobbed. I am your mother-in-law. I can't. Dylan cut her off, voice growling. Mother-in-law or lady of the house? I don't care. You just need to know one thing. I do what I say. In my head, the saying diamond cuts diamond popped up, but where was my diamond? In this house, I was seen as a servant. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to be calm. Getting angry now only helped the one holding the knife handle. Upstairs, paper flipped swish, then a pen hitting the table. Dylan spoke slowly, clearly, stamping each word. This page you sign. This page you sign. Don't try to negotiate. Mrs. Vance wheezed. Give me time. Dylan laughed again, this time with relish. Time? I give you until morning. If not signed, tomorrow morning, you're famous. I closed my eyes for a second. Famous sounded like a joke, but it was a death threat by public opinion. I suddenly understood why Mrs. Vance had been strange these past days. She was being held in an invisible cage, hurting more the more she struggled. I stepped back, afraid standing too long would get me caught. My legs were soft as noodles, but my mind was strangely clear. I couldn't rush up and knock, nor could I tell Tom right now. Because without something solid in hand, I would be accused of making up stories, and Mrs. Vance would panic and deny it even more. I returned to my room, closing the door as lightly as if nothing happened. Lying down next to Leo, I watched my two children sleep, eyes stinging. I didn't cry out loud. I just felt a decision forming inside me, cold and sharp as a scalpel placed in the right spot. People say if you walk at night often enough, you'll meet a ghost. But I understood ghosts sometimes aren't on the street. Ghosts can sit right in the house, speak sweetly in front of outsiders, then use the word honor to strangle those inside. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not to be diligent, but because I feared being a beat too slow would lose the opportunity. I cooked minced pork porridge for Leo, steamed buns for Mia, then took Leo to the corner for the school bus. It was cold, dew gathered on the leaves. I pulled my collar up, but still felt the chill. The chill of someone who heard a threat at 3 a.m. Back home, the living room was empty. Tom had left early, saying he had errands. I looked at the chair he usually sat in, seeing it empty just like the way he dodged every issue. I didn't blame him anymore. Blaming only exhausted me. I just reminded myself, keep a clear head. Around 9 a.m., the third floor door opened. Mrs. Vance walked down, face fully made up, but eyes wandering like someone emerging from a nightmare. She didn't look at me, just walked straight to the door, throwing back, I'm going out for a bit. Her voice tried to be normal, but the I sounded stiffer than usual. Dylan followed, shirt tucked in, car keys in hand, still smiling. Emily, watch the house for Mom and me. The sentence sounded polite, but his eyes swept over me cold as a draft. He didn't need me to answer. He just needed me to know my place. When the two of them were out of sight, the house seemed to exhale. I stood in the living room looking up at the stairs. For days, the third floor had been like a locked box with the key in untrustworthy hands. I couldn't storm up and rummage like in a movie. Nor could I act recklessly and be accused of being an insolent daughter-in-law. I needed a legitimate excuse, one that fit my role. I sat down and texted Mrs. Vance a short message. Every word weighed. Mother, I'm going up to get the blood pressure medicine. Sleeping pills you keep in the medicine cabinet, okay? I'm afraid you left in a hurry and forgot them. I watched the screen wait, heart beating like I was standing before an exam room. Tens of seconds later, she replied curtly. Yeah, take them. Just one word, yeah. But I felt a door crack open. She might not dare ask for help verbally, but she had placed a small stone as a marker. I took Mia with her puzzle box to the living room. You play here for a bit, okay? She nodded, holding a puzzle piece. I walked fast, but not hurriedly, as hurrying reveals intent. The third floor was silent. I stood before the medicine cabinet in the hallway, a small, wooden wall cabinet usually locked. Previously, I saw it had a lock, but didn't know where the key was. I looked down at the table drawer next to it and saw the key lying right there, exposed as if someone left it on purpose. I picked it up, hands slightly trembling, unlocked it, clicked. The door swung open. Inside were vitamins, stomach meds, cold meds arranged neatly. I pretended to search for the right medicine for the roll, eyes scanning behind. Ah, just as I suspected. Behind a large vitamin bottle was a thin black object, a secondary phone. I took it out, hands freezing. This phone couldn't be mine or Tom's because we used different models. I dared not stand long. I stepped into Mrs. Vance's room for a beat, leaving the door ajar to avoid the line of sight from the hallway, then turned on the screen. The device required a pattern unlock. I swallowed hard. This type of password is easy to guess if you've seen it once, and I had seen it the night before. I saw Dylan holding the phone. His finger swiped a very specific shape, fast as a habit. I took a deep breath, trying that exact pattern. The screen unlocked. My heart pounded against my ribs. I wasn't happy. I was scared. Scared I'd see something I shouldn't. Scared my hands would shake and reveal me. Scared a notification would pop up and make Dylan suspicious when he returned. I didn't open random things. I looked straight at the photo, video folder. There was a folder named innocently like documents. Inside sorted by date and time. A few files had small cloud icons, a sign they were syncing. I shuddered. Syncing meant it wasn't just on the phone. It meant even snatching the phone might not save it. I touched a short clip, just a few seconds, enough to confirm. The screen showed Mrs. Vance. Eyes panicked, shoulders hunched, and in the frame, I saw Dylan leaning into the camera, glancing at it and smiling very slightly. The smile of someone who knows he holds the noose. I closed it immediately, watching no more. Watching more would make me collapse before I could stand. I returned to the home screen to check quickly. The sync account was logged in. I didn't have time for a big move like changing the password, because one wrong step would alert a logout, and Dylan would know instantly. I just memorized the account name and one important detail. The phone was on silent, meaning Dylan deliberately muted it to avoid detection. I put the phone back exactly where it was behind the vitamins, arranging everything as if undisturbed. I took 2 strips of real blood pressure medicine and put them in my pocket, locking the cabinet. Before leaving the room, I stood still for a second to listen. The house was quiet, only the sound of Mia clicking puzzle pieces downstairs. I went downstairs, slumping into a chair for a moment to breathe. I looked at the medicine strip in my hand, finding it funny. I asked to take real medicine, but what I just touched was someone else's poison. Mia ran over, hugging my leg, offering a puzzle piece. Mommy! I picked her up, kissing her forehead, telling myself I was doing all this not to win for the sake of winning, but so my children wouldn't have to grow up in a house where their mother was intimidated every day. I put the medicine in my pocket, silently recording in my head what I had seen. Not much, just enough so that one day, when someone opened their mouth to call me a liar, I could stand tall and say I wasn't lying. I just refused to be blind anymore. I waited for the right moment. Not when I was angry, not when crying, but when I was lucid enough to speak without stumbling. That afternoon, I picked Leo up, fed him, then sent him to his room to play Legos. Mia lay with her head on my lap, playing with a hair clip. I looked at my 2 children for a while, then texted Tom, "Come home early tonight. I need to talk." Tom came home looking tired. Walking in, he asked immediately, "What is it? Did you argue with Mom again?" I put down my water glass, looking straight at him. "I didn't argue. I just want you to listen once. Then you decide." Tom sighed. I didn't mention the clip. I started with something he couldn't deny. "Do you know Mom is being forced to sign papers?" Tom froze, but tried to stay calm. "Who told you?" I replied, "I heard it, and I also saw something wrong." Tom frowned. "Emily, don't speak vaguely. What did you hear?" I lowered my voice, placing each word on the table. "Dylan is using something to threaten Mom. I just need you to understand. Mom is not in retreat. She is scared." Tom gave a forced laugh, the kind of person trying to push the subject away. "You're imagining things. Mom is a strong person. Who can threaten her?" I held back, not letting that sentence puncture me. Strong people have weaknesses too, and for Mom, it's face. Tom stood up, pacing back and forth twice, then turned. If you're so sure, why not say it to Mom's face? I answered immediately. I want to tell you privately first so you don't humiliate Mom. Do you understand? I am saving Mom a way out. Tom was silent for a beat, his face wavering. Just then, footsteps echoed from the stairs. Mrs. Vance walked down, dressed neatly, phone in hand. Behind her was Dylan, light shirt, slicked hair. He saw me and Tom standing in the living room and gave a measured smile. Oh, family meeting? Something fun? I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. I turned to Mrs. Vance, keeping it polite. Mother, I want to speak with you. And Tom, I see lately you haven't been okay. Mrs. Vance blocked it immediately, voice sharp. I am fine, don't make up stories. I swallowed hard. Mother, I just worry you are being forced to do something, right? Just one sentence, and Mrs. Vance's face went pale for a second before the cold layer slammed back up. She tapped her hand on the table. What are you saying? Who forces me? I looked straight into her eyes. Dylan. The air froze. Leo poked his head out of his room. I quickly signaled him to go back in. I didn't want children hearing adults. I turned back, speaking slowly. I don't want to make a scene. I just want you to be safe. Mrs. Vance laughed dryly, her eyes shifting from panic to anger. Safe? Or do you want to destroy my house? You are truly talented. Making up stories for my son to hear. I shook my head. I'm not making it up. I have grounds. Dylan chimed in then, pushing the victim tone. Emily, saying that wrongs me. I came here loving Mom. Loving the whole family. You keep suspecting me. It hurts my feelings. He turned to Tom, sighing. Tom, maybe Emily is upset because Mom has new happiness, so everything I do looks wrong to her. That sentence stuffed the pre-existing thought right back into Tom's mouth. I saw Tom's eyes change color clearly. He turned to me. Emily, is that enough? I stood still. Is that enough? Not a question. A conclusion. I tried to keep my voice steady. You asked me if it's enough? Did you ask Mom why she locks the door, why she transfers money, why the family lives in two separate worlds? Tom gritted his teeth. Whatever Mom wants to do is her right. And you suddenly make up stories about forced signing and threats. Do you have proof? I looked at Mrs. Vance. I understood immediately that if I pulled out anything here, she would deny it to the end in panic. Because standing before her son, her dignity, just as I predicted, was her thickest armor. I took a breath. I don't want Mom to lose face. But honestly, Mom, you are being scammed. Mrs. Vance snapped back, voice higher. Am I scammed, or are you crazy? You've been a daughter-in-law for a year. Have I treated you so badly you have to invent stories to harm me? Before I could answer, Tom turned to Dylan, voice lowered so much I didn't recognize my husband. Stepdad. Please understand. My wife imagines things. I froze. Not because of the word stepdad, but because of how he bowed down to the person standing in my house like a master. I looked at Tom, asking a very quiet question. You call him that? Where do you see me standing? Tom avoided my eyes. Don't speak anymore. I understood. If I kept pushing, Mrs. Vance would deny it more. Tom would cling to that denial to reassure himself the house was fine. And Dylan just needed to stand there watching us bite each other. I stepped back, voice strangely calm. Fine. If everyone says I am falsely accusing, I will stay silent. Mrs. Vance tossed her head. Silent is good. Don't cause trouble. Dylan smiled lightly, eyes skimming me like a reminder. Right. Shut up. I turned into the kids' room, closing the door. I sat down next to Leo, watching him build Legos. Mia hugged a pillow, giggling. But inside me was a hollow space. I didn't cry. I just saw clearly one thing. To save someone who is scared, sometimes you can't drag them into the living room. You have to open a back door where they won't be named, won't lose face, and the person holding the knife won't have time to react. The next morning, I took Leo to school earlier than usual. It was freezing. The boy wore a wool scarf, walking and asking, Mommy, why were you quiet yesterday? I stopped, stroking his head. Because I want the house peaceful for you to sleep well. Saying it, I realized it sounded exactly like the sentences adults use to soothe each other, which sometimes are the very reason the peace rots from the inside. Back home, I still cooked, still did laundry, still smiled at Mia. I didn't let anyone see I was changing, because in life, revealing your cards is offering your neck to be grabbed. I waited until Tom went to work, and Mrs. Vance and Dylan were upstairs. I took Mia and a bag over to the neighbors, asking her to watch the baby for an hour, making the excuse of going to the pharmacy. Actually, I went to meet Sarah. Sarah was my best friend from college, straight as a ruler. She was an accountant for a construction firm, dealing with all kinds of papers and tricky schemes, so I needed exactly that kind of person. I met her at a small coffee shop near the market, a place with hot tea, plastic chairs, where anyone sitting could hear the traffic and life clashing together. Sarah looked at me walking in and frowned. "You look like you haven't slept for 3 nights. What happened?" I didn't beat around the bush. I told it concise but complete. Mother-in-law marrying Dylan, locked third floor, strange cash flows. The night I heard the forced signing, and most importantly, I saw the secondary phone with data. I didn't ramble about feelings. I just stated the key points for Sarah to grasp. Sarah put down her tea, eyes darkening. "This isn't a family matter anymore. This is manipulation and extortion." I swallowed. "But if I say it, they say I'm accusing falsely." Sarah laughed dryly. "Because you speak with your mouth. Mouths are easily broken. You need something unbreakable." I pulled out my phone to show Sarah the screenshot of the transfer notification. Sarah glanced and nodded. Money moving like this shows intent. But money isn't enough. The key lies in the threat and the papers. I said softly. "I heard it, but just heard." Sarah crossed her arms. "Hearing alone means he denies it. To trap him, you need clear audio, the right voice, the sentence that must be said, recorded in a logical context." I looked around the shop, seeing aunties buying vegetables, talking about pork prices, and sons getting married. Suddenly, I felt less alone. My family drama turned out to be just a form of life, only pointing at me. Sarah reached into her bag, pulling out a small black pen, looking like a normal signing pen. She put it on the table. "Here, voice recorder pen." My eyes widened. "A real spy pen?" Sarah tapped it. "Pen and recorder, one button only. Press once, it runs. Press again, it stops. Plug into a computer, get the file." I picked it up, hands shaking. The pen was light but felt heavy as a rock. I understood, if I did it wrong, it would become the thing that branded me as schemer. But if I didn't do it, I would be swallowed by silence. Sarah spoke firmly. "Listen to me. 1. You do nothing, except being trampled. 2. You do it, but do it clean, neat, no exposure, no arrogance, no demanding justice with tears." I smiled miserably. "I have no tears left." Sarah looked straight at me. "Good. Tears just blur your vision." She instructed me right at the table. "Button here. Try pressing it." I pressed. Sarah leaned in. "Say something." I stammered. "Sarah, I am testing." Sarah signaled to stop, plugged headphones into her phone to listen back. My voice came out clear, traffic noise included but not overwhelming. I got goosebumps. First time hearing my own voice without fear of being twisted. Sarah added every nail to the coffin. "Don't hide it where it's easily found. Don't put it in Dylan's bag. If he searches, he finds it. Don't record when you are arguing. Let him say the threat himself. Most importantly, you must keep a retreat path for your mother-in-law. She fears losing face. Corner her in front of her son, and she will deny until death." I was silent. That was exactly what my heart thought. I asked softly, "How do I get her to cooperate?" Sarah sipped her tea. "You don't need her to be a hero. Just need her to press the button. A scared person, just one small action is brave." I gripped the pen. In my head appeared Mrs. Vance's face the night I entered the room, swollen eyes, hunched shoulders. That woman could be sharp with me, but right now she was a victim of something filthy. Thinking that, I felt both anger and pity, a stinging kind of pity. Before leaving, Sarah stopped me, voice dropping. "Emily, honestly, doing this, you must be calm like peeling fruit with a knife. Don't swing your arm, just cut exactly where needed." I nodded, throat tight. "I understand." Sarah smiled faintly. "Understanding is living. Being vague is dying." I went home, walking through the gate with a steadier heart. I no longer had invisible panic. I had something concrete in hand, small but enough to make the gossiping mouth shut when the truth spoke. That evening, I hid the pen in a place no one would think of in my sewing kit, under layers of colored thread and loose buttons. Placed there, I sat down looking at my hands. I didn't feel myself getting stronger in a loud way. I just felt less naive. And in a house where people turned white to black, being less naive was a survival step. That afternoon, the wind picked up. I cooked chicken porridge for the kids to warm them up, then set Leo to color in his room, instructing him, "Watch your sister for a bit. Mama's going up to give something to Grandma." Leo nodded like a big brother, and Mia hugged a small pillow, eyes drowsy. I didn't wear an investigative face. I carried a tray of hot tea and a few slices of orange. Tea was Mrs. Vance's habit. People who keep up appearances love things that follow proper etiquette. I thought to myself, to talk to her, I must walk the path she is used to. The third floor was quiet. Mrs. Vance's door was ajar. I stood outside, knocking lightly, voice small. "Mother, it's Emily." I brought hot tea. Inside was silence. But unlike previous times, I heard a very faint sigh, like someone forcing themselves not to cry. I waited a beat, then pushed the door just enough to see her. Mrs. Vance sat with her back to the window, shoulders sagging, fingers fiddling with a silk scarf. On the table was a stack of papers, skewed, not tied with red string like before, but clipped efficiently. The neater, the scarier. She didn't turn around, just spoke emptily. "Leave it there." I put the tea tray on the table, pulled a chair to sit a respectful distance away. I didn't look at the papers. I looked at the nape of her neck, where gray hairs showed hair she usually dyed carefully. Only now did I see she was just a woman past half her life. Not a wall. I opened slowly. "Mother, allow me to say one sentence. Not to argue, not to make you lose face." Mrs. Vance laughed softly, voice dry. What face do I have left to talk about? That sentence was like a needle prick, but I swallowed it. I knew if I reacted, she would put up armor. I just said, "I know you are angry at me, but I didn't come to apologize. I came because I am worried." Mrs. Vance spun around, eyes red, but trying to harden. "Worried about what? Worried I lose the house? Or worried I get criticized?" I shook my head. "I worry you are being forced." Mrs. Vance's face went white for a second, then immediately pulled up the cold layer. "Forced? Who forces me? You plan to accuse again?" I didn't debate right or wrong. I just put the truth in its place. "Last night, I heard you say, just don't send it. I don't need you to admit it. I just need you to understand. He is using your honor to gag you." Mrs. Vance squeezed the scarf, lips trembling. "You eavesdropped." I nodded. "I didn't mean to. I woke because Mia coughed. I heard, and I was scared." Mrs. Vance smirked, but the laugh was distorted. "Scared? Scared for me, or scared for yourself?" I looked straight, scared for Leo and Mia too. If this goes too far, the house is in chaos. The kids suffer most. Mentioning the grandkids, Mrs. Vance blinked fast. That blink was like touching the softest part she wanted no one to know. I lowered my voice further. "Mother, good reputation is better than a fine shirt. I understand you live for reputation. But reputation held by the throat isn't reputation anymore. It becomes a pillory." Mrs. Vance bit her lip. She wanted to argue, but couldn't. She whispered, "What do you know to speak?" I replied, "I know you are afraid. I also know you can't say it in front of Tom. The more you deny, the more he pushes. You stay silent. He thinks you accept it." Mrs. Vance turned away, tears rolling, but she wiped them fast, fearing I'd see. I didn't expose her. I let her keep some dignity. I took the pen from my pocket, the small pen Sarah gave me, and placed it on the table. Not pushing it close, just within sight. I said, "You don't need to fight. You don't need to scream. You just need to press one button." Mrs. Vance looked at the pen like looking at something dangerous. She asked, voice hoarse, "What is this?" I replied, "Voice recorder pen. I just need his clear words. I don't want you signing anything in fear anymore." Mrs. Vance shook her head continuously, voice breaking. "No, no. If you do that, and it leaks, I die." I said immediately, firmly, "You don't die from truth. You only die from silence." Mrs. Vance stared at me wide-eyed. For the first time, I saw her look at me like an equal, not a subordinate daughter-in-law. I continued slowly but decisively. "Mother, I promise. I won't humiliate you before the world. I just want to block his path. You just need to ask again clearly so he says it himself. Public gossip is scary, but evidence is scarier to a criminal." Mrs. Vance trembled. She raised her hand, then pulled back, as if fearing touching the pen admitted weakness. I didn't push. I sat still to let her choose. A long while later, she uttered a sentence that sounded like begging but tried to keep command. You are sure to keep it secret?" I nodded. "I keep it secret. I do this to save you, not to bring you down. Mrs. Vance looked out the window, the wind shaking the curtain. She said, very small, almost like the wind, I, I didn't expect. Though she choked and didn't continue, I whispered in addition, placing a chair for her to sit. You taught me a daughter-in-law, must keep traditions. Today, I ask permission to remind you, a straight tree fears no storm. You aren't wrong for wanting happiness. Wrong is letting someone turn happiness into a trap. Mrs. Vance looked down. Her hand finally touched the pen. Not strong, not decisive, touching like crossing a shaky bridge. She grabbed it, squeezing until her knuckles were white. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say I rely on you. She just whispered, eyes avoiding me. Tonight, he comes up here. I understood that was consent in her way. I stood up, asking nothing more, just replying shortly. Yes, I know. Before leaving, I heard a sentence behind me, very small. Emily, don't let Tom know. Fearing I'd make her look bad, I turned back for a second. I don't need you to look bad. I just need you safe. I closed the door, heart beating fast but not in panic. I knew in this house a rare thing just happened. My mother-in-law, once hard as stone, took a hold of an escape route. And that escape started with a small movement, pressing a button. That night, I put Leo to bed early. I told him a story about a rabbit who kept promises so he would sleep peacefully. Mia drank her milk, nuzzled my shoulder, and fell asleep. I sat for a few minutes listening to their breathing, telling myself to be alert because upstairs was a storm without thunder. Tom came home late. He walked into the room and collapsed, asking me nothing. I didn't speak. I just looked at him, seeing clearly the strange distance, like two spouses living on separate shores. He slept quickly, the sleep of someone tired but also hiding. Near 11 p.m., I walked out to the hallway. I didn't hold the recorder pen. The pen was in the hand of the person who needed to press it, my mother-in-law. I only needed to stand where I could hear and react if things went wrong. I chose the second-floor landing, where the yellow bulb cast just enough light to see the stairs, but dark enough to be unnoticed. Upstairs, initially just the TV low, then the door closing click, then silence like water before a stone is thrown. I leaned against the wall, palms sweating. Cold wind from the stair window made me shiver. I heard my heart beating steady but strong. I reminded myself not to panic. Panic reveals. A while later, voices began to drift down. Dylan's deep drawl, sounding like he was educating someone. Have you thought it through? I told you, sign, and it's peaceful. Mrs. Vance's voice replied small, shaky, but trying to be firm. If I sign, you delete everything, right? I closed my eyes for a second. That exact sentence. She was doing it my way, asking so he confirms. I held my breath. Dylan laughed. A dry sound. Delete? You are so naive. Sign, and I keep it. Even if you run, you can't escape. My nape went cold. That way of speaking wasn't a husband. It was a predator viewing prey. Mrs. Vance choked. But that house is mine. It's where Mr. Vance is remembered. Dylan cut in, voice growling. Remembering or worshiping, I need the paper. You sign, the house is in my name, then you can worship whoever you want. The sentence, the house is in my name, fell clear as a hammer blow. I dug my nails into the wall edge. I knew just recording this sentence left him no retreat. Mrs. Vance continued, sounding like pleading. You promised not to put that on the internet. Dylan replied immediately, slowly, clear as reading a curse. Don't sign, tomorrow morning you are on the internet. I say it, I do it. My eyes stung. On the internet is social death for a woman who values honor more than breath. Dylan grabbed the exact pain point, strangling without a rope. In the room above, paper flipped swish. Dylan dropped another sentence like sprinkling salt. Sign fast. If you want to keep face, listen. Mrs. Vance asked again, trying to grab a float. If I sign, will you let me see the grandkids normally? That sentence hurt me. Even now, she thought of Leo and Mia, meaning inside her, the grandmother instinct was stronger than the matriarch instinct. I swallowed a lump. Dylan replied cold as ice. Sign, then you can be whatever grandma you want. Otherwise, you are nothing. Silence for a few seconds, long as a lifetime. Then I heard Mrs. Vance breathing hard, the chair squeaking lightly. I guess she was shaking, but the pen was in her hand. I prayed. Press it right. A moment later, Dylan's voice softened, faking sweetness. There, signed. I love you. Don't make it hard. I almost laughed from the bitterness. That love is the love of a master, patting a dog's head. I stood a while longer until there were only footsteps and the door locking upstairs, then quietly returned to my room. I walked very lightly to avoid creaking floors. Entering the room, I looked at Tom sleeping soundly, unaware of what was tearing the roof apart. I sat down next to Mia's crib, stroking her cheek. Inside my head, the sentences replayed clearly. The house is in my name. Don't sign. Tomorrow on the internet. I didn't need much more. Just those phrases were enough to seal every door of denial. And I knew tomorrow in the living room wouldn't be a mother-in-law-daughter-in-law argument. Tomorrow would be when the truth spoke, without me needing to scream a single word. That morning was dry, the sun pale like a thin layer of dust on the neighborhood roofs. I woke early to feed Leo breakfast, then told him to color in his room, absolutely not to run to the living room. I carried Mia up, kissed her, and sent her to the neighbors to watch for a bit, making the excuse of cleaning the house. I didn't want children hearing adults fight. The house was messy enough. Kids didn't need noise to be scared. Around 8:30, Tom walked out of the bedroom, still groggy, hair messy. Mrs. Vance came down later, face fully made up, but eyes dull like someone missing sleep. Dylan appeared too, white shirt, phone in hand, looking relaxed as if the house inherently belonged to him. I invited everyone to sit at the coffee table, voice calm. Today, I asked permission to speak once. Briefly. Tom scowled. Emily, don't make Mom tired. I looked at him. Am I making Mom tired? Or is someone else making Mom tired? Mrs. Vance immediately put up her guard. Whether I'm tired or not is not your concern. Dylan smiled lightly. Emily, just be calm. Talk slowly. I nodded. Okay, I won't argue. I'll just let everyone hear a segment. I didn't pull out the secondary phone. I didn't mention what I saw. I chose the exact blow prepared, the recording. I opened the file received from my mother-in-law last night. She had given me the pen before breakfast. Her hands shook, eyes avoiding me. I just glanced at her for a second to understand. She was placing her honor in my hands. I pressed play. Dylan's voice rang out clear in the bright, cold living room. Sign. The house is in my name. Don't sign. Tomorrow morning you are on the internet. The room felt choked. Tom froze, eyes bulging. Mrs. Vance looked down, hands gripping each other white. Dylan paused for exactly one beat. The smile on his lips vanished like water thrown on fire. Tom turned sharply to Dylan, voice cracking. You. What did you say? Dylan jumped up immediately, slamming the table. Fake. AI. Fabrication. I sat still, voice even. If you say fake, let's go to the police for forensics. Audio can be analyzed. Devices can be analyzed. Dylan glared. You dare threaten me? I replied shortly. I don't threaten. I state the method of proof. Dylan turned to Mrs. Vance, switching to victim voice. Honey, tell them, did anyone force you? Speak. Mrs. Vance pursed her lips, tears welling, but trying to hold face. Tom looked at his trembling mother, finally seeing what he had avoided for days. His mother wasn't enjoying happiness. His mother was tied up. He stepped forward half a step, voice small. Mom, what is this? Mrs. Vance didn't answer immediately. She looked at the floor like standing on a cliff. I understood making her speak now was cruel. I didn't force. I turned the spear to the lock, the one holding the data. I looked at Dylan. You say I'm lying. Do one simple thing to clear it up. Log out of the cloud sync on all devices. Change the password right here. Turn on two-factor authentication. Done? Then you leave? Dylan sneered. Who do you think you are giving orders? I didn't change expression. I am a person sitting in my house, hearing you say the house is in my name. If you don't do it, we go to the station. You choose. Tom stepped fully in front of Mrs. Vance now, voice hoarse. Dylan, stop forcing my mother. The phrase my mother rang out like a slap to the husband role Dylan wore. Dylan looked at Tom, eyes flashing malice. You trust your wife over your mother? Tom swallowed saliva, then spoke decisively. I trust the ears that just heard. The air was heavy as stone. Dylan knew he was stuck. He tried to salvage. I said it in the heat of a marital argument. I blocked immediately. What couple argues by threatening the house is in my name? Tom turned to me, for the first time not snapping. Emily, are you sure? I looked at him, not blaming anymore. You just heard it clearly. Finally, Dylan flopped down, mashing his phone angrily. He followed every step I said. Face dark. I didn't care how mad he was. I watched the screen to be sure. Log out. Change password. Two-factor on. I demanded one more thing. Delete from trash bin. Check. Logged in devices. Dylan ground his teeth, lips tight. Done? He threw the phone on the table, standing up. Happy? I nodded. Happy. Get out of the house. Dylan glared at Mrs. Vance, once a glare no longer sweet, only spiteful. Then he grabbed his car keys and walked out. His flip-flops slapping the tile sounded harsh. But strangely, when the door closed, I didn't feel relief immediately. I just felt a large, empty space, where before was a shadow pressing on the whole house. Mrs. Vance sat still, then suddenly burst into tears. Not the high-maintenance crying, but crying like someone who just survived death. Tom stood paralyzed, lips trembling. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't say I forgive. I stood up, poured a glass of warm water, placed it in front of Mrs. Vance, speaking slowly. Drink a little to regain strength. In the living room, for the first time, I saw power shift not by shouting, but by a short segment of truth, enough to turn every denial meaningless. After the door closed, the house became quiet enough to hear the clock hands run. Mrs. Vance sat hugging her face, crying, shoulders shaking. Tom stood by like waking from a long coma, eyes red but not daring to touch his mother. As for me, I felt exhausted but knew I had to stay sharp. Saving someone from a bad guy is only half the journey. The other half is keeping this house from collapsing from its own internal cracks. I pulled a chair to sit opposite Mrs. Vance, voice light. Mother, just tell me one thing. Did you sign any papers yet? Mrs. Vance looked up, eyes swollen, shaking her head. No, not yet. He forced me to sign last night. I was too scared. Hearing that, Tom's face went pale. He lowered his head, voice rasping. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Mrs. Vance sobbed. Tell you so you despise me? Tell you so the relatives would laugh in my face? I live by my name. I'd rather suffer shame alone. That sentence stung me. I hated how she treated me. But I also understood that reputation is sometimes the armor that makes people stab themselves. Tom turned to me, voice low. Emily, I'm sorry. I was so stupid. I looked at him a while, then spoke straight. No, wait. You stood in the wrong place. When I was looked down on, you were silent. When Mom was forced, you were silent. Silent until this house was almost lost. Tom swallowed, nodded, not arguing. Mrs. Vance wiped her tears, looking at me for a long time. This time she didn't look with scrutiny, but looked like someone realizing she owed a life. She said, voice broken, Emily, Mom is sorry. 2 words, sorry, from Mrs. Vance's mouth was something I never thought I'd hear. I didn't reply, I forgive. I just said what I needed. Mother, don't let anyone grab your neck again. From now on, papers, money in the house must be clear. Mrs. Vance nodded, then panicked, as if remembering. The recording. You plan to take it to the police? Tom looked at me, eyes fearing and pleading. I understood what they feared. Not fearing Dylan, but fearing the public, fearing neighbors gossiping, fearing relatives laughing, fearing the name being dragged out. I spoke slowly, so every word was warm enough. I don't want you exposed, but I'm not stupid enough to go empty-handed. Rest assured, I keep it safe, just in case he comes back. Mrs. Vance trembled. Keep means what? I replied. I don't distribute, don't tell anyone. I keep minimum evidence and ask Sarah to store it separately. If everything is quiet, consider it never existed. Mrs. Vance exhaled, but teared up again. I made you suffer. I looked at her, saying truthfully, you made me suffer for years. But this time I didn't save you because you were good to me. I saved you because I don't want the 2 kids growing up in a dirty house. Tom lowered his head. I knew that sentence hurt him. But pain to wake up is better than comfort to go blind. In the following days, Mrs. Vance didn't lock the 3rd floor anymore. She didn't text me to wash anyone's clothes. She walked in the house quietly, scolding less, checking the kitchen less. Tom began doing his own work, taking Leo to school, bathing Mia. In the evening, he folded clothes with me. He did it clumsily but genuinely. One day, he sat next to me in the kitchen, voice small. I thought being filial was listening to Mom. Who knew there's a time listening to Mom hurts Mom? I replied, filial piety isn't closing your eyes. Months passed. Winter truly set in. One morning, I was making oatmeal. Mrs. Vance walked down, holding her phone, face white. She showed the screen to me, voice shaking. "Emily, look at this." News on the local blog popped up. A young man arrested for blackmailing multiple wealthy women with videos, holding data on the cloud, linked to a fraud ring. The mugshot was Dylan. I looked and felt no gloating laughter. I just felt light like dropping a stone. Karma arrives in its own way. Some people endure shame to keep face, but eventually, shame finds the one causing it. Mrs. Vance slumped onto the chair, clutching her chest, panting. "Oh God. Lucky." I nodded. "Lucky you stopped in time." Tom walked in, saw the news, face paling. He turned to his mother, holding her hand. "Mom, I'm sorry." Mrs. Vance cried, but this time cried lightly like someone who accepted. That night was cold, wind slipping through the door. I was folding clothes when I heard a very soft knock. I opened it to see Mrs. Vance standing there, holding a bowl of slow-cooked herbal soup, steaming hot, smelling sweet. She looked awkward, eyes avoiding me. "Emily." "Mom cooked soup. Eat to stay warm." I stood still. Just a bowl of soup. But to me, it was a second apology, needing no words. I took it, throat tight. Mrs. Vance turned away fast, as if afraid I'd see her being weak. I carried the soup into the room, placing it on the table, watching the two kids sleeping. Inside me, the silence now wasn't heavy, like a padlock anymore. It was the silence of people who passed the storm, knowing what is reputation, knowing what needs keeping. In life, ladies and gentlemen, there are things thought to be saving face, but are actually self-binding. Honor is precious, but don't let anyone use honor as a noose. And being a daughter-in-law, or a mother, a wife, or a child, needs boundaries, needs alertness, needs one time daring to stand straight so the house can be truly peaceful.